Welcome to another episode of Women in Politics, Another View. Today we have the privilege of being at the home of future Lieutenant Governor Gloria Romero, candidate, and I'm laughing because her dog's out here and he's so cute. So we're going to start by telling you a little bit about Gloria. She is a historic reformer, education leader, and first woman in California history to serve as a state Senate majority leader representing East LA and San Gabriel Valley. She built a reputation as one of the legislature's most effective and independent voices. She previously served in the State Assembly, LA Community College Board, and as a professor at Cal State LA, where she is a professor emeritus. Before I introduce you to Gloria, I want to play a video about her, telling you a little bit more about her.
I'm Gloria Romero. I'm a Republican, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor of California. I was the majority leader of the California Senate, the first woman elected to this historic office. And yes, I was a Democrat. But after seeing years of Democrat one-party rule in Sacramento and its failed outcomes for everyday people, I left the party. I walked away. In the last few years under Gavin Newsom and Democrats, we've seen $250 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse. $18 billion for a bullet train, 0 tracks. $24 billion to end homelessness. Can't tell us where it went. $32 billion in unemployment cash, stolen. And it goes on and on and on. Meanwhile, California leads the nation in poverty, food, gas, housing, energy. It's unaffordable for too many Californians. Only half our kids can read and write at basic levels of proficiency. California has been totally run by Democrats for 16 years. They fail us every day. As Ronald Reagan said when he left the Democrats to become a Republican, I didn't leave the party, they left me. Maybe you've never voted for a Republican before, and maybe you don't agree on all the issues. That's okay. But we need to hold the Sacramento Democrats accountable for their failures on homelessness, affordability, crime, education, and housing. I'm going to hold their feet to the fire. Join us. Walk away like I did. Demand a better future for California. Vote for change. Together, we can make California golden again.
Gloria, that was a fantastic video telling us all about why you left the Democrat Party. So before we start talking about that, which was great, I just want to thank you for inviting us to your home. It's a beautiful home. It's a beautiful scenery out here to relax. So I just want to know, it talked about why you left the party, but what happened after you left? I mean, what's the reaction from the Democrats and from Republicans? Have you been welcomed? Have you been shunned? What's going on?
Well, thank you so much for joining me at my home here in East Los Angeles. Just a little something you should know is I actually built this home. This is a family-sponsored project. We did this many years ago. Today, there are many more regulations, prohibitions, taxes, you name it, that would have made it a lot harder to build this home. But I love it here. It's my little place of serenity, and welcome your audience as well, too, to my little home in East LA. So what has happened since? Well, let me go ahead and say, like President Reagan before me, once upon a time, I really didn't leave the party left me. And what I mean by that is I grew up essentially as a, blue Democrat in my household, a traditional Mexican-American Latino family. We had the Pope, and we had John F. Kennedy, and basically those were really the idols for my family. It was an era in which my father worked the railroads, the overalls, the lunch bucket that he took every day. A working class father. My mother was a homemaker. She had worked as a domestic worker cleaning homes when she was
a teenager, didn't get the chance to go to school, had to drop out in 6th grade in order to provide for the family. But they provided for opportunities for the children. There were 6 of us all together. And we grew up in that era where we believed in America. We believed in American exceptionalism. We went to the moon. That's the era where we believe that we do not ask what our country can do for us, but we can do for our country. So I kind of say it was like America first before President Reagan and Donald Trump today. It was a focus on the American worker and opportunity, but we had to do our share. Fast forward a few decades, that wasn't the party that I saw anymore. During the time that I did serve in Sacramento, and I was there for 12 years, from the moment I walked into the Capitol till the day I left, I was sort of a funny Democrat because I believed in school choice, universal school choice. I believe that it's not vital for us to only provide funding to go to the state identified by zip code. You go to this school, no matter if it's failing, no matter if it's been failing year after year, decade after decade. And Deanne, the funny thing is that the state of California keeps those statistics. So at any time you can pull up the data and see in this school, 80% of the children are not reading at basic levels of proficiency. And that's what I saw in the district that I represented in East LA. In the state of California, it's like almost half of all the children in California are not reading at basic levels of proficiency. They're not able to do math at basic levels. So we'll never compete internationally. We're not going to have a competent workforce ready to go. So those were some of the things that I really, believed in, and yet my party didn't. And so I would run legislation. I was able to finally get some legislation enacted, and that was only because at that point we didn't have monopoly one party rule. We actually had a Republican governor in those days. So I was able to work with all of the Republicans, both houses, get legislation to the governor, and he would be able to sign it because he believed in school choice too. And that shows the power of breaking monopoly rule, because if we keep with monopoly rule, we'll never get the values that I think the vast majority of Californians believe in. So that's why I ultimately left. There were other issues as well. But after I left, overall, it was pretty positive. I was welcomed into the Republican Party. I will tell you, though, the most exciting welcome was actually when I met President Trump himself. And I had the great honor of speaking at his only rally in California in Coachella. And when the president and I, and my daughter was with me, we got to meet with him. And he didn't pull out like a plan and say, where do you stand on this? And what about this? And what about that? To see if I passed a litmus test to become a Republican. You know what he did? He just had a big smile and he said, welcome to the Republican Party. And it was such an honor. And I think what he recognized and what he really has built is the big tent, a bigger tent for all of us. And this big red tent, I'm wearing red today, this big red tent that symbolizes that we are changing America and we're going to values of faith and family and freedom that we care about. And we might not agree on all issues, that's okay, but on the fundamentals, on the basics, it's important to basically say we're going in a different direction that puts the American worker first, that values the family, that values a secure border and keeping us safe, and fights for school choice so that every child has an opportunity to succeed. Some people ask, do you get nasty emails and people saying, no, you can't join the party? I get those. Some people say, well, you're a Democrat. Yes, well, so was our president, by the way, and Leo Terrell and Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy and
long
Elon
list.
Musk. Exactly.
Long list.
But for the most part, it's really been a welcome. And if I can say, think about it, I think it's probably historic that this year in California, the California Republican Party endorsed me to be lieutenant governor, a former Democrat, a Latina, having represented East Los Angeles. I think it's a first. And I think the delegates in the Republican Party who understood and said, "You're welcome in this party." And as goes East LA, perhaps so goes the state of California.
It'd be fantastic. I know that the state CRA didn't endorse you because there was some confusion. There's some ugly people running against you that were saying some very ugly things, and it got the delegates confused. But individually, many of the CRA units, the California Republican Assembly units, have endorsed you because we all believe in you. I'll be prejudiced. I believe in you. I'm voting for you.
Thank you.
We had a little break because we have a special guest also. This is Mr. Tubby Romero, and he is a rescue that Gloria found, a couple years ago?
6 years ago, he was abandoned during COVID here in the East Los Angeles. Nobody claimed him. So here he is with me.
And he is a precious baby, fur baby. And when she travels, sometimes she takes him with her. And I'll tell you, the Federated Women love her and love Tubby, and does everybody. It's a great
Thank
dog.
you.
So back to finding out things about you. Talk about how you felt with all the riots and the anti-Semitic on the campuses, because I know that I, as a Messianic Christian, meaning my family's Jewish, I chose to become a Christian. Um, it infuriated me beyond words after what happened in Israel, and then them coming here and doing that. Tell us how you would have handled it if you, at that time, were the lieutenant governor. How would you have done it?
Right. I'm so glad you raised this, Deanne, because it deeply troubled me. I have traveled to Israel 2 times now. I have visited Auschwitz. I made it a personal pilgrimage to go because I believe that never forget, it begins at home. And during these years, remember, I was serving in the legislature. I represented East LA. And a lot of people think East LA is, a Mexican community. It largely is a Mexican American Latino community, but the roots are Jewish. I mean, remember,
Interesting.
yeah, once upon a time, it's Cesar Chavez Boulevard. I'm sure it's probably going to be whitewashed, taken off at some point. But before it was Cesar Chavez Boulevard, it was Brooklyn Avenue.
Oh.
Well, Brooklyn is New York.
Yep.
And when you go to, and I walk through some of the old cemeteries, that's where you get really a respect for the people who came before us. You can walk through some of the old cemeteries and you'll see, Jewish names that are buried there, the old delicatessens, the homes, etc. And so many people forget that this was a Jewish community before East LA, transformed in this largely Latino. And it's the power of immigration. If we take a look at all of our communities, we see the role, the change. Nothing is ever really static. So I always believe that it was important to unite with the Jewish community, to have this bond, sort of an east-west between the east side and the west side, and to pay homage, because there's so many similarities between Jewish families and Latino families. Our faith, our families are very important. Food, definitely. Food is very important. And I think, too, the quest for freedom. So I've been very honored in having been endorsed by ICANN for this particular race. And I want to really.
I'm sorry, what is ICANN?
Again, too, it's the Israeli California Action Network. It's a group that basically endorses candidates that have and believe in a strong Israel and looking for better relationships between the communities. So that's a very important community. I'm going to be going to a synagogue in a couple of weeks. They've invited me to go, along with other members who are running on the golden ticket. We are going to be talking at the synagogue with many of the members there about what happened on October 7th. And to go to your point, I turned on my television set as well right after that horrendous massacre and raping and killing of young people, women, families, babies. It was horrendous. And then here at home at UCLA, to see that Jewish students were being barricaded in hallways and closets for fear of their life. And you know, Deanne, I did 2 postdoctoral fellowships at UCLA. So I walked that campus, I was in those libraries. I never had to hide for fear of being killed or murdered or raped at UCLA. And so when I saw that happening at a public university, I joined a couple of others. We went out to UCLA. We called on the governor. Where are you? This is a public university. UCLA is internationally recognized. And right here on our campus, at our expense, this is the people's campus. It's UCLA. We asked, where's the lieutenant governor? Because the lieutenant governor is actually a regent for the University of California. And she was missing in action. You know, where's the chancellor? Where's anybody? It was just silent. Nobody acted. If I had been lieutenant governor that day, I would have gone out, and believe you me, that would not have been tolerated. Call for the arrest, the dismantlement of that camp that had been set up, the freeing of the students. Nobody should ever be persecuted or in fear of their life because of their national origin, their religion, the color of their skin, their ethnicity. It's horrific. It's un-American. And today, what I would say going forward as lieutenant governor, as a regent, I'm very proud that the Trump administration did negotiate across the country with many universities, including UCLA and USC in Southern California. They initiated a number of compacts, and these compacts are to ensure that students, staff, faculty, visitors to a campus, they should never be persecuted. There should be no anti-Semitism. They can lose federal funding, as they should.
Good.
And so I'm going to be overseeing that, and if need be, expanding to other campuses as well.
One of the duties, responsibilities of the lieutenant governor that is near and dear to my heart is Coastal Commission. My niece recently was one of the victims of the Malibu fire, the Pacific Palisades fire, and her home was destroyed. And trying to get things back going, the Coastal Commission, those people are insane, in my opinion. And we need someone with a voice of reason to be on the Coastal Commission. And I'm hoping that that voice is you.
Count on it. That is again to another commission on which the lieutenant governor will serve, along with the land commission, and there are so many others. But the Coastal Commission, for example, is one where the current lieutenant governor has been missing in action. We have seen major fires in coastal communities in Los Angeles, in Malibu. We've seen the wreckage, the destruction of homes, and I'm so sad to hear this about your friend. I know many as well too have lost their homes, and those who have not lost their homes, they've been fire impacted. And you have to ask for what? Remember, the Coastal Commission they're all appointed by the governor, and many of these are just donors to the governor.
Exactly.
But as lieutenant governor, one thing that I didn't mention before is that I would be the president of the Senate. And that's important because I did serve as the majority leader of the Senate once upon a time. So I know where the bodies are buried. I know the rules of the Senate and how you move nominations to confirmation. And that's so important because right now the Coastal Commission, it's dominated by Newsom appointees who are far left, woke, environmentalists,
yes,
who worship at these extreme altars of environmentalism that even now believe this. The New York Times, just I think yesterday, issued a report, a column saying, I think Democrats have to rethink their worshiping of this extreme climate agenda. That is incredible. That just came out. And we've seen that there. So, for example, fire mitigation. You know, I would serve on the Coastal Commission, and it's dealing with land and the coast and everything that's around it, to say you have to cut shrubbery. I mean, I live hillside here in East Los Angeles,
yes,
and I get every year a warning from the city of Los Angeles. If I do not cut down my shrubs and keep the hillside clean, I will be cited. I will be put into violation. A lien could be put against my property if I don't mow it down because it's fire tinder. I mean, we live in year-round fire conditions. And that's been from the beginning of the time that I first moved here, like 30 plus years ago. So you can imagine East LA. Well, what about what we saw in Malibu, around Pepperdine? We saw it in the Palisades, intense vegetation, the Eden Valley, paradise up north as well. This is
Yes.
across the state. And the Coastal Commission basically just let them burn. And then between the incompetence of the governor and the mayor, we saw the destruction. Then the Coastal Commission makes it even more difficult. They add insult to injury by saying, oh, not so fast. You can't rebuild yet because you have to go, and they're asking them to build these structures underneath the home, in the ocean, blah, blah, blah. It is incredible, the stories that we are hearing. So I will serve as a lieutenant governor to ensure that we get sensible new commissioners that will make it to confirmation and serve on the commission. And then I think too, we have to take a real strong look. Do we even need a coastal commission in the first place? I think there's a lot of issues there that can be taken away and put back into the governor's house with some kind of authority there, so that you don't just have these unnamed donors to a candidate who won for governor who are making these decisions that the government should have. And one other thing too, we're getting ready to celebrate 4th of July in a couple of months. And what did the Coastal Commission do? And this was the president of the Coastal Commission. She stood up and she said, no fireworks for you in Long Beach. She
Really?
shut down the annual celebration of 4th of July with the fireworks display because of climate change. It's basically
insane.
it's an anti-American attitude. Climate change has almost become synonymous with just hating the traditions of 4th of July, the fireworks. So the city of Huntington Beach said, come on over, we'll celebrate here. I'll tell you, when you come out on 4th of July here, and you're not supposed to have, illegal fireworks going off, but it does show the patriotism of people. Every year, you will find the biggest display of fireworks, so that if the government, the city, the state doesn't provide for something, the people are going to do it for themselves. Just saying, I'm not endorsing it, but you'll find the biggest display. People love America. They care about their country. And this is America's birthday. They want to celebrate.
On your plan, Gloria's plan for California, you state that about leading a task force to stop human and sex trafficking. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Deanne, this is one of the saddest things of California. California and Los Angeles, not terribly far from here, the Figueroa corridor is the epicenter, the number one place for human sex trafficking in the nation.
Wow.
It is incredible.
Right here in
Los Angeles? In Los Angeles, downtown, the Figueroa corridor. We launched an investigation into this. And so as Lieutenant Governor, I want to pursue this and bring this task force under the auspices of the Lieutenant Governor. I think as a woman, as somebody, when I was a senator, I wrote many pieces of legislation that dealt with domestic violence, for example. I dealt with issues pertaining to rape and sexual assault. So I think it's important to highlight that today, the number one trade, the commerce, it's basically human beings.
Wow.
And to a large extent, they're little girls.
Oh.
I mean, boys as well, but little girls. And many of them are foster children. They might be runaways as well. Also, I do think that there is an international cartel industry that's going on with the trafficking that's going on. So it brings into perspective the international relationships. And I would look forward to leading a delegation, probably my first internationally, that would meet with the Mexican government to talk about this international trafficking of slaves and to say, stop. How do we work to make sure on the Mexican side and the California side that we end this practice of the human cargo that's being sold on the streets of Los Angeles? We have to take a tough stance and stop it. And I think, too, for us, especially as women, but everybody should care about it, these are our daughters, these are our children, our sisters that are out there in silence, and we've got to end it. You might have seen the film a couple of years ago, The Sound of Freedom,
Yes.
that really went around the world. And anybody, and if you haven't seen it, please tune in, find that, because you get the bigger perspective of what happens on the, oftentimes the lying to parents, the kidnapping of children, the migration, the dumping, the trafficking, especially in sex work. And then we find the end of the trail is right here in Los Angeles, the city of the angels.
Disgusting.
Disgusting.
It's
So
just disgusting.
I would have the power to do something like that and really make it a top priority to have negotiations and discussions, work with law enforcement, work with women's groups, work with foster families, our schools, our churches especially, to end this practice. It shouldn't exist anywhere in the world, and not here in California.
Well, when Biden opened up the borders, we had 330,000 children. 330,000 children are missing. A lot of them got to be here in California.
You're
There's missing children, and they got to be part of this whole sex trafficking thing. And unfortunately, Biden and the Democrats did not care at all about these children, which makes me just so furious.
You're exactly right. And going back to, again, to a reason why I left the Democrat Party, or the party left me, I come from an era where, we have legal migration to the United States. There is a process, there is a rule for that. We support that. You got to go through, be vetted, etc. America is a very compassionate country. But what we saw under Biden and Kamala Harris, remember, she was the border czar.
Yes.
That wasn't immigration. That was really an invasion. That was just a smashing of the borders. It was complete open borders. And unfortunately, that is what the Democrat Party has become today. There's no respect for citizenship. There's no respect for the rule of law, for the legal process of becoming an immigrant and a naturalized citizen. And Deanne, when I was in the legislature, every Flag Day, I would hold a special event, and I would invite all new citizens, people
cool.
who had gone through the process, and I would invite them, and we held them throughout the district to come, and I would lead them in their first flag salute as an American citizen. And I will tell you, Deanne, that those days were the most festive. They were joyful. You would find balloons and flowers and people coming with their children because they were so proud to say, I'm an American citizen. I did it. And we wanted to welcome them. And it was always one of the most rewarding of all the things that we've done, that Flag Day, becoming a citizen, is so important. And, Latinos very much support. I mean, we are a very patriotic community and support the process for citizenship, because so much of what we find, like the sanctuary states, sanctuary cities, they especially hurt low income, working class communities where we are preyed upon, not praying like from above, but you are victims of this illegal activity that's taking place.
Yeah, it's so unfair to hardworking men and women to lose their jobs to someone that's here illegally, that is not assimilating into our culture. I grew up in El Monte.
Mm-hmm. That was in my district as well.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I didn't even know people. I didn't know blacks from Mexicans, from Latinos, from anybody, because to me, everybody was the same. Because in those days, you judge people by their character, not the color of their skin. The reverse of what Martin Luther King was trying to tell everybody. So it's very frustrating that everything is so, you have to be Chinese and Mexican and this one and this one and that. Can't we just all just be Americans and just live together and be there for each other, and with all the people that they've let in here and what they've done to our country is it's disgusting. So we need you, Gloria Romero, in Lieutenant Governor, to do these things because we don't have a voice. We really don't have a voice in Sacramento at all.
Well, I will tell you also, as Lieutenant Governor, serving as a regent, especially for the University of California, but also as a trustee for the Cal State system, a governor for the community colleges, um, I'm going to uphold Prop 209. And remember, a few years ago, there was an effort by a coalition of Democrats who tried to undermine the people's will and to basically say that it's okay to discriminate on the basis of skin color. And I joined a coalition with many Asian Americans in California. Ward Connerly was part of that coalition
Love
as well.
Ward.
And we just said no, exactly for what you said. Judge us on the content of our character, not the color of our skin. And the reason this matters, especially in education, that's why I feel so passionate about what the Lieutenant Governor's office can do, because the major priority for the Lieutenant Governor is serving as, I think, the chief education voice in California. Because under Prop 209, it says you cannot, for purposes of admissions, employment, contracting, just look at skin color. There has to be meritocracy. You have to have earned it. You have to show the value of it. And this year, even, there's new efforts to try to undermine Prop 209 once again. So we are going to stand there overwhelmingly, and we saw it in the vote, overwhelmingly in every quarter of California, including Latinos, African Americans, whites, Asians, you name it. We overwhelmingly said no to that undermining of the proposition. We believe in what it says in the Constitution, judges on the character of who we are. And that's very important too, because as Lieutenant Governor, I want to create a pipeline, a TK through 16 pipeline to connect the elementary and high school portions with college, because when we talk about why so many kids can't read, they're just pushed along, social promotion. Then they get to the university, and we find that so many of the students coming in are forced into remediation, which means they have to use their scholarship money to go into classes that don't count for a college degree. So it takes a longer time, it's more money. They run out of scholarship money. They have to drop out because they were admitted in the first place. And so I think we have to
Sad.
really, exactly, we've got to get tough for the students as
Yes.
well. And it's better for them to know right away, let's work on this. Almost half the entire state budget of California goes to education, and yet we're producing a product that is not meeting the standard. The state of Mississippi has passed us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
They are the worst.
unbelievable. So as Lieutenant Governor, the best reparations we can give to anybody in California is quality education, school choice,
Yep.
and parental rights in being able to choose the school that works best for their child. No more of this passing failure along. And then we end up, unfortunately, having to go back and think, well, golly gee, let's just pass it along because the schools are not doing the jobs that they're supposed to be doing.
As someone who spent several years owning vocational schools, it's always irritated me and really bothers me the fact that everybody gets pushed into college, yet trying to find somebody to fix your air conditioner or your plumbing is so expensive because there's so few, because everybody went to college and they can't get jobs, but the jobs that are needed, nobody's training them for. So I know that President Trump is doing a push to get vocational ed, trades, working with the trade unions and stuff. Is that anything that your position as lieutenant governor can do anything about encouraging that?
Of course. I mean, career technology, looking at new technologies, artificial intelligence
Yes.
as well. That's impacting the job market for all of our graduates today. And even if you aren't graduating right now, being in the workforce right now, it's continuous training overall, skilled trades. You might think about it, when I left the party, going back to why I left the party or the party left me, Just think about the elitism. Once upon a time, it did stand for the American worker. And just a couple of months ago, one of the president's selections to become a member of his cabinet was ridiculed by a sitting senator in the United States for having been a plumber once
Oh,
upon a time.
you're
And
kidding.
it was the denigration. And I remember watching that hearing where he was being, confirmed, where he was talking about who he was. And it was just the height of arrogance. Like, oh my God, you worked with your hands.
Oh,
You were a plumber. And I think the best thing actually is that here's somebody who literally can drain a swamp
yeah.
and was in Washington now to drain the political swamp. And that's what we need to be in California. My mother worked cleaning homes for many years as a young woman. My father worked the railroads, got dirty, blue collar workers, disrespected. I come from the working class, so many people that are there. And President Trump, the Republican Party, embraced us, welcomed us, respected us, because America doesn't work when your toilet is clogged
Right.
or when you can't get your air conditioner going during a heat wave, as we're expected to have this weekend. All of these are critical, and it's ever changing. So yes, we have to restore the respect, provide for the resources. I advocate, no matter if you go to college, if you don't go to college, we have to be workforce prepared and ready, and find the best institutions to do that. So as lieutenant governor, I definitely will be there advocating for such.
Title IX was instituted in California some time ago. And as far as I know, both Democrats and Republicans were supportive of keeping girls and women in sports and protecting them. But that's not what's happening today. It's a mess. Can you tell us what you think about all this?
You're absolutely right. And another reason why I say I don't know what that party is any longer. The Democrats left me. They said we can't even define what a woman is. So you start there. And I'm of the generation, Helen Reddy. Remember the song, I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar? We marched for women's rights, for equality under the law. We could define what a woman is. And today we just celebrated Mother's Day. I mean, the Democrats were saying you can't even call us mothers. We were supposed to be birthing people.
So we're supposed to be Happy Birthing Day?
Happy birthing day. And I
Jeez.
thought, and in Latino culture, we don't just have one Mother's Day, we have two Mother's
Yes.
Days. So it's like, no, that doesn't work. I know what a woman is. So it goes to the issue of Title IX because, this is a federal law. Women across the country are protected. And so, once again, as lieutenant governor, I would have a very strong role because we find so many young girls from the time they're little. They work, they train, they get ready, they commit their life, their skills to hopefully earning a scholarship that will pay for their college tuition and fees. And then they get to college and they find out, wait a minute, you've been replaced. Here's now a biological male competing against you. As we saw yet again in California just a few days ago, national statewide championships where once again the biological male dominates track, field, swimming, you name it. So that is just wrong. As lieutenant governor, I will lead the charge from higher education to say this is wrong. We're going to protect our girls, work with our governor, work with our attorney general to make sure that what part of Title IX do we not get? It is the law of the land. You can call somebody a birthing people all you want, but the state doesn't have to recognize that. And so we've got to stand up and defend. And I thank you for raising this question. It is so important. And it should motivate every woman in California to ask of every candidate, do you support Title IX? Are you willing to stand up to the governor who has said in a podcast once upon a time, oh, that's unfair, but then he has done nothing about it. And so we need to really ask every candidate, where do you stand? I am a candidate. I'm a woman who will stand up and say that girls' sports and women's sports belongs to girls and women, and you cannot have biological males in those sports. Fundamentally unfair, and it's illegal.
As a voter, I vote in for my everything from city council to the president of the United States. Yet like in California, we have like 800 or 900 commissions. These are unelected people who are running our lives. I didn't vote for these people. What can we do? And I know as lieutenant governor, you probably can do little to nothing, but as voters, what can we do to stop this nonsense? How do we get rid of all these commissions?
I think this is a very serious question. And think about all these boards and commissions. You have to start adding up what's the cost because they have to get
Exactly.
together. They get travel fees. Most of them are not paid, they're volunteer, but you got to transport them to Sacramento. Then you have again to staff, etc. So it's a lot of money that the taxpayers pay. And you're exactly right. They are unelected. They are doing jobs and functions that should belong to the people that the people that the people have actually voted for to go there. So I think one of the first things we can do right away is, first of all, with the gubernatorial process, let's get some good people in. Then we can decide, simultaneously as we go forward, which ones do we really need? There's a lot of fluff commissions that we should just eliminate,
Yes.
return back. There are other commissions that have really overstepped their authority, their boundaries, they're coloring outside the lines of what they're supposed to do and bringing about rules and regulations that they shouldn't even be addressing or that have gone too far and have been basically creating this nanny state that we have seen in California. So there's actually a lot that we can do. That's where I would be working with, our Republican governor, our Republican attorney general to really look through these and to begin to highlight which ones should continue, which shouldn't, which are constitutional, and how do we doge basically
Absolutely.
California and get rid of the fluff.
Yep.
Every donor to the governor should not get a position. We're not Oprah, a car for you and a commission for you and a land grant for you.
Exactly.
We can't do that.
I know in Orange County, once you get voted out of office, they find a commission for you to go on. And it's ridiculous. We got people in Sequa who know absolutely nothing. People on commission know nothing about what they're talking about. But it's a pay for play or however they say that.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous. Okay, enough of that. Let's talk about you and where you grew up. This past weekend, you had the opportunity to go to your hometown, welcomed by friends and family. It was a wonderful time. And you got to go to your home where your family built the home and raised 6 children and got you into politics in the first place. So let's hear that whole story.
Well, I thank you for raising that. It's really exciting. I am from Barstow, California, very proud of it. And when people ask, how did you get involved in politics? It really was something that most people wouldn't think about. It wasn't like I just decided I want to be a senator one day or I want to run for lieutenant governor. Way long ago, when I was probably a very young teenager, maybe even 12, 13 years old, I grew up on a road that was basically, it was a dead end road. On the other side of the tracks, on the other side of the highway, which connected people living outside the city limits to the town. And it was a dirt road. And what that meant in Barstow was that anytime we got into our vehicle, we literally had to carry a shovel in the vehicle because it would be quite common for the car or the truck to get stuck in a dirt road before you even got to the main highway.
Wow.
So finally, my father just said, ya basta, enough. And what he did was he said he was going to petition his government. And that's a story as old as time. So I remember when we were in the kitchen, everything happened in the kitchen. We didn't have bedrooms for ourselves or studies or office. Everything was at the kitchen table.
Yeah.
And my father said, he pointed to me, he said, you can write this down. And so he told me what to write, a very simple petition, but basically, we the people. I mean, where did that come from? We the people petition our government, you, the city, the county leaders, that we pay taxes, we contribute to the welfare and the economy of this community. We ask for you to pave the road. That was it, just pave the road. And so I remember that I wrote it down. And then we went knocking up and down the road. We knocked on every door. And in those days, I didn't talk a lot. I talk a lot now, but in those days, I didn't talk. But I was so proud to go with my father, and he did all the talking in English or Spanish, depending upon the neighbor. And I stood by him. I would hold the petition, the pen, and I would give them the petition. And as my father explained it, everybody signed it, and they would put their John Hancock. And so that's what happened. And it taught me, we ultimately did get the road. My father, it wouldn't have happened without my father just saying, enough. We are going to ask and demand services. No taxation without representation.
Exactly.
And so that stayed with me because it really was, and I didn't think at that time, oh, I'm going to run for governor or lieutenant governor or senator or whatever. But it struck me that it's the power of people. It's we the people means something. And that's really when people ask me, how did I get my start in politics? I always go back to that experience of what it means when you sign your name saying, we the people are petitioning our government to treat us and use our tax dollars, not their tax dollars, our tax dollars, to serve the people that you represent. It's really, I think, the most important message that everybody should know. And that's why voting is so important, because ultimately your vote is your voice. Your vote is your petition. In Spanish, we say su voto es su voz. Your vote is your voice. You don't like it? Vote this way.
Exactly. You can't complain about the government if you don't vote.
Right.
Because you just can't do that.
Right.
Everybody needs to vote. Now it's interesting. You went from a small town, Barstow, to college there, and then you went and ran for office. There was a segue from college to what'd you do? You taught, and then you ran for office. Who asked you first time to run for office, or how did that come about?
When I was in high school, I actually volunteered to get a member of our community elected to the city council in Barstow. We didn't win that election. I say we because it's everybody, the volunteers and everybody, the candidate. As a candidate, I don't do it alone. I've got a fabulous team that's with me. And of course, I thank you for all you do, and the volunteers and everybody else. Um, but I never thought about running for office myself. I went to college, community college, Cal State, University of California. I became a professor, and I taught at Cal State Los Angeles for a number of years. And I loved it there. These were mostly first generation college students, kids like me who had never been to a university. Nobody in their family had ever been to a university before. So it was just a natural place for me to be. And it was there when I was at Cal State LA, really fighting for education reforms. Back then, I could see that kids were being socially promoted. I would see the kids coming into the university and they couldn't perform at a college level, reading and mathematics, because if you look at that whole pipeline in K through 12 that was not preparing students. I would talk to their parents. I would work with them, tutoring, you named it. And so one day I got a phone call from, actually, she was a professor at a community college, East LA College, in fact. And I remember I was upstairs in my home. I was cleaning my closet. So I think it was symbolic. I was cleaning the closet. It was a very hot day. And she called and I answered the phone. And she said, Gloria, I think you should run for the LA Community College Board of Trustees. And it just clicked. And I dropped that cleaning mop, and the rest is history, as they say. But it made sense. Education,
Yes.
Community colleges, fighting to give opportunities for people to enter well into the workforce. So that's really where it began. But it was predicated on all of those experiences before.
That's wonderful. I mean, you have a wonderful, wonderful life. Um, you've done incredible things. You have done, the parent trigger law is so, so important. And the charter school you founded is still operational.
Right, right.
And what's the name of that school?
Well, there's a couple of networks that I've supported over the years, worked on, and they're still going strong.
I understand you recently cut a commercial ad for our Spanish speaking listeners, and hopefully we're going to get it out on radio. And We should play it for our audience now.
Hola, soy Gloria Romero y apruebo este anuncio. California era conocido como Estado Dorado, donde podríamos tener una vida mejor, tener una familia, adorar a Dios. Pero esta promesa está muriendo. Pagamos impuestos altos, pero ¿a dónde va el dinero? Vemos tanta pobreza, crimen, fraude. Las escuelas están fracasando. No podemos pagar la renta, comprar una casa. Las políticas permiten hombres en los baños de nuestras hijas y quieren quitar nuestras estufas de gas. ¿Cómo vamos a tostar las tortillas? Basta. Soy Gloria Romero, su candidata a vicegobernadora. Les pido su voto para mí, Gloria Romero, para restaurar el sueño californiano. Vote, Gloria Romero. Hazlo por su familia.
That was a great ad. What prompted you to make it?
Well, thank you. I mean, we find interestingly that if we take a look at California, almost 40% of the population are Latinos. Not all are Spanish speaking, but a good number are. And increasingly, Latinos are participating in electoral politics, either as candidates or they're running for office. In fact, if you look at the legislature today, some 39% of the legislature itself are representatives of Latino origin. And so we often hear, oh, Latinos don't vote. And you look at that number, 39% of the legislature, including today, the Speaker of the Assembly and the President pro tem of the Senate are Latino and Latina. So I think I don't want to hear this garbage that Latinos don't vote. We participate, we vote. And so we want to make it as accessible in English and Spanish. So we did record this particular ad, basically talking about how important this election is. You know, su voto es su voz, your vote is your voice, introducing myself and talking about some of the major issues that don't just affect Latinos, because we often say the Latino agenda, it's an American agenda.
Absolutely.
We all care about, you know, a future for our children, making sure that we're all safe, a good job, respect, safety. So there's nothing different about the Latino community, except I would say one thing that I put a big plug in for is that we will not give up our gas stoves to the climate change ideology, because as a Latina, you can't toast a tortilla in a microwave or on an electric range. You need the old-fashioned, the true gas stove. So that might be the only Latina portion of the agenda.
Gloria, thank you so much for spending this time with us. And it is so important that if you have your ballot, fill it out today and get it in.
Most people have no idea who is the lieutenant governor, that there even is a lieutenant governor. But it's a very important position. And when you open your ballot, you're going to find there's about 16 people running for lieutenant governor. So go through the list, make sure that you find my name, Gloria Romero. In fact, our communications director wrote a fabulous song, created this song. And just remember, if you can't remember, just kind of think, you know what, Gloria, and the music will get you to the name on the ballot. But please vote. I've got to emerge out of the primary first and then into the general election, so that if I don't end up being one of the top two, I can't go to the general. That's why every vote counts. I'm counting on you to help me become your next lieutenant governor by voting for me. Move me out of the primary, and then we're on to the races in November. So thank you so much, and I'm glad you came to my home. I'm glad you met little Tubby, and just thank you for spending this time with me. And thank you to your listeners and your audience. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us in another Women in Politics, Another View.
Who stands strong, a voice for all the people, to right what has gone wrong. She brings the